Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Tom Rivera, and we're here this afternoon at the Powell Library at Cal State San Bernardino. We're in the fourth floor of the library, and this afternoon we will be continuing our oral history of South Colton, and our guest this afternoon is Mr. Charles Cervantes. Charlie, do you mind if I call you Charlie?
Yes, please.
Charlie, welcome, and thank you very much for being with us this afternoon.
It's an honor to be here.
Totally appreciate that. And we have your wife Cynthia here with us, and she's going to chime in if she has anything that you have to add to the discussion.
All right.
All right. Now, your grandfather, Jesus Cervantes,
Right.
was one of the few businessmen that we had in South Colton. And tell us, when did he start his store in South Colton? Approximately, when did he start his store?
You know, finding some kind of old paperwork, it seemed like it was like about 1938. And the property where the store was located on was 7th Street in South Colton.
Uh-huh.
And then it moved to its 8th Street location. I don't know. I would suspect maybe about 1940.
So must have been in 1938,
1938 is when it started.
And the location was M and
8th Street or La Cadena.
Yeah, on the northeast corner.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Good. And I see you have a picture of the store.
Yes, I do.
And what I'd like to do with all the pictures that you have, Charlie, is perhaps you can let us borrow them.
Sure.
And then we can scan them
Sure.
and include them later on into our conversation this afternoon.
Sure, and I'll tell you that it's got my grandfather's store, it's got a delicatessen that my father used to own, and then Brill's store, you know, well known to the
Oh,
community.
the shoe store,
The
the
shoe store.
clothing store.
At their very first location was across from Valley College, and then the second location was right there. It's a property that my grandfather owned, and they were there for a number of years.
And then next to the Brill's, the shoe store was
It's
your house.
Where I lived, yeah, where we lived. Yeah.
Where you lived.
Yeah.
And you know, Colton back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s was quite a busy little area.
Yes, it was.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was a hub city.
The hub city.
Yeah.
And they call it the hub city because the railroads met there. Santa
Right.
Fe and Southern Pacific. Santa Fe went north and south, and Southern Pacific went east and west. So that's why they call it the hub city.
Yes.
And we were extremely fortunate because also the freeway went through there, Highway 99, from Los Angeles to Palm Springs.
Right.
It was a busy area. Now tell me, tell me about your grandfather. When did he come to Colton?
You know what? It had to be in the 19s, somewhere there. And he met my grandmother here in the United States, and and he worked at the cement plant like a lot of people from South Colton did.
That's a Portland cement plant in Colton?
Yes.
What years? Do you remember what years he
Oh,
worked there?
this must have been maybe in the 30s, somewhere in the 30s. And so they started the grocery business. I guess they saw a need for that. The idea came from my grandmother's brother, and I don't know his name, but he had the idea that he gave my grandmother about opening up a grocery store. And I don't know what her educational background was, but she could read or write. But my grandfather was very limited, Jesus, which would have been my father's father. And so as I was told, she was the one that kind of taught my grandfather to read, to write.
Tell me about your grandmother. Where was she born in Mexico?
She was born, and I'm going to use my cheat sheet here. She was born in Durango.
In Durango?
Yes.
Do you have an idea of where your grandfather came from?
Yeah, I have no idea.
No, okay.
Yeah, I'm sure I heard it, but I just don't remember.
And you said both of them met here in Colton?
They met in the United States. I don't know so much in Colton, but they met in the United States.
And do you know when they got married?
They that would have been somewhere in the early 30s.
In the early 30s?
Yes.
And your grandfather worked for Portland Cement?
Yes.
And then your grandma said, look, we have to open up a store.
Yes. It was kind of her idea. I didn't know this till later on in my life. I said, oh. And so they went from 7th Street to 298 South 8th Street, or La Cadena, as it's known now. And it was a thriving store. They had which I thought was a huge truck, maybe a 2-ton truck. They used to go into Los Angeles and buy wholesale groceries, and they would go on a weekly basis, I think it was. And this is when those little stores flourished. And so they had a pretty diverse population that used to come in. And my grandfather's brothers worked there.
Well,
And,
so it was kind of a family business then?
yes, it was a family business.
And your grandfather's brothers, how many brothers did he work at the store?
He had Donato, Pilo, as he was called.
Donato, and then the second one was?
Pilo, and then that was it. Then his other brother Carmen worked at the cement plant, and they had a sister Shirley. She didn't work the store.
Okay. And when they opened the store, were just the brothers working at the store, or did your dad and your uncle work at the store?
They all worked. They all worked the store. And then the World War II broke out. So everyone was drafted somewhere in 1942, 1943.
Yeah. So tell me about your dad and your uncles. You had your dad's name was Carlos.
Carlos, yes. Yes.
When was he born?
Carlos, your dad was born in 1918. So your grandparents were married in 1916 or 1917. You said the 30s.
Okay. I was thinking about my. Okay,
So,
thank you.
Frank, in correction, the grandparents were married in 1916, and Charlie's father was born in 1918.
1918.
1918.
Okay, thank you.
And then your father, and then he had two brothers. Who were the brothers?
Well, my father was the oldest.
Okay.
And then there was my Uncle Tony, and then
Okay.
my Uncle Ralph, who was kind of the baby of the family.
Okay.
Father was drafted into the Army Air Corps, and he had met my mother in the grocery store. My mother grew up in High Grove, which was Riverside County, just on the very lip of Riverside County. So they were married.
How did your mom from High Grove, they came to shop groceries at your grandfather's store?
Right.
And your mom and your father saw each other?
Right.
And that was it?
Yes, and my mother's father was very strict. They had to kind of do it on the slide. Meaning those were the years, right? And so they were married in 1943, May 16th, and then I was born July of 44.
Okay.
And he was stationed here in the area. They used to have a lot of military bases in the area, Redlands, and I forget what other city.
And where did he work?
He worked, he worked the store, and then after he got out of the military, he worked the store again, and then he opened up a delicatessen, Mexican restaurant.
Oh, next to the store?
Next to the store,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
So he ran that for just a number of years. And then you either grow or you get overwhelmed by other restaurants. So he closed down the restaurant, and he worked at a liquor store there in South Colton, Dolphy's, I think. I mean, it was there for forever in South Colton. Then from there, he went to Kaiser Steel in 1959 till he retired somewhere around 1983, 84.
Well, I do remember your dad working at the store, your grandfather's store, and I must have been about a fourth or fifth grader. Okay, Charlie?
Okay.
And my parents used to shop at your store, and your father buttonholed me and said, would you like to sell magazines and newspapers for me? And we had them here at the store. You grab your bike, he said, and you go around the neighborhood and sell the newspapers and magazines, and I'll give you a percentage of what you sell. So I did that for your dad when I was a fourth or fifth grader.
Wow.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting. Now tell me, was it hard to get the store going? You know.
I would imagine it had to be kind of pretty labor intensive at the very beginning.
Yeah.
Just to set everything up. But I never saw that kind of hard work. I just saw the grocery store just flourish. It was kind of one of the hubs in South Colton. It was right there in the main drag, and there was just a lot of traffic, a lot of people.
I guess your grandfather knew what the products
Yes.
he could sell at the store that would be popular with the residents.
Oh yeah, with kind of the local population. And I remember vividly Christmas, because they used to have Christmas trees out in front of the store, 20 or 30 of them, and people, shop for the Christmas trees and, walk away with them. And as a child, this store was huge, but as I grew as an adult, I go, gee, this was a small place.
Well, you know what, you had a carniceria in the store.
Yeah.
You had a carniceria.
Yeah.
You sold carne molida hamburger.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then you sold also, I remember buying bologna there in the store, and also the weenies.
Yeah.
And you had some steaks.
Yes, yeah. It was kind of full service here with just a
Yeah,
lot of different
pork
types of
chops
beef.
and everything else.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was full service.
Yeah.
And how about vegetables? Did you sell vegetables there?
Oh yeah, they had everything.
Uh-huh.
They had everything. As a matter of fact, they were. They had a cross section of just a lot of different, racial groups that used to kind of shop there, and it wasn't. Then Stater Brothers kind of came on the scene around, I think, the middle 50s, but for the first 2 years, my grandfather's store kind of outsold Stater Brothers.
You're kidding.
No, for the first 2 years. And then, of course, Stater Brothers took off.
Right.
But, yeah, my father told me that,
Excellent, very, very good. That was a popular place. Now, Charlie, what made it popular? Because you have businesses that open and businesses that flourish and some that don't. What made it? What made it so popular?
There was like an episode from a few decades ago, Cheers, kind of where everybody knew your name. It was kind of like that, only in a grocery store type. I mean, everybody knew everybody's name, kids, notes to the store, give me a pound of bologna, I'll pay you later, or put it in the account. And it was a real extension of people's families. Sometimes people wouldn't even shop, they'd come in here just to say hello. And it was like a grocery store community center. And my uncles, my father, they were very friendly with everybody. If I could kind of bring in Father Valencia, in the icons of South Colton.
Right.
And there used to be a lot of they were called back then hobos that used to kind of get off the train there.
That's right. We had the train was close by.
Yeah.
And they would get off there.
And they would get off there because
and
they
then
knew
maybe,
Father.
Yeah, maybe transferred north or south because both railroads were there.
That wherever they were headed.
Right.
So they knew Father Valencia. Father Valencia had a reputation of helping feed these folks, because Father Valencia would go to my grandfather's store about once a week or as needed, with about 20 or 30 men in tow, and to my grandfather's store. My grandfather would feed everybody, sandwiches and whatever they needed to kind of sustain themselves. And this happened on a regular basis, and I think that was kind of the first time that I saw kind of taking care of that fellow man, my grandfather.
So it was service, direct service.
It was direct service, and you have a reputation that kind of is out there.
And friendliness.
Friendliness, yes.
And then the products that people needed were there.
Yes, and then there was credit. People had
credit. Tell me
credit.
about credit. I know what it is, but
Right.
People would go there and buy products.
They would buy, yes. They would buy products. They had a little box where they had your name and I don't even know if you had a credit limit or not, but if people would come in, they didn't have, payday was maybe too far away, so they would put your name and the amount, give you a receipt, and we'd hang on to a receipt. And then came payday, you would pay. When the store closed around 56 or so, or 55, somewhere in that area, I remember my grandfather took me around to collect some old bills. Unfortunately, he was not very successful. People's memory kind of disappears that they owe something. So,
that was one of my questions on my
Yeah.
list here. Did people pay
yeah,
regularly?
They paid regularly. When the store was open, they paid regularly.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, there was
So
never.
payday on Fridays, they would come
Yeah,
down and
yeah.
take care of their
Yeah.
bill.
There was never those issues that I can recall when I was
Uh-huh.
kind of in and out of the store. But once the store closed, people's minds got fuzzy as far as what they owed. So,
And you said the store closed about maybe in the 50s, 55, 56?
yes, in about 55, 56, somewhere
Uh-huh.
around there. And, by this time, my father had kind of, had the restaurant going. Uncle Tony was working for I think for the state. And Uncle Ralph was working, Mako or whatever that construction company
Mako,
was.
M-A-C-C-O,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay,
It
Mako,
was
yeah.
located in South Colton.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So the kind of the sons kind of drifted after the war, and
Yeah.
but my grandfather's brother still worked there for a while. Everybody aged out, so.
I was going to ask you, you said Father Valencia would bring the hobos
Yeah.
to your grandfather's store,
Mhm.
your grandfather would provide food for them.
Right.
Did your grandfather participate in Las Fiestas Patrias?
Yes, we did. And one year we had a float. At least one year that I can remember. I
Okay.
remember we were up there in little tables,
Yeah.
moving around. Yeah, he participated in events.
So Fiestas Patrias, there was a parade then?
Oh yeah, that was a big time parade. Yeah.
So it was
And,
big doings for the Fiestas Patrias?
It was big.
Uh-huh.
Whatever they have now, it's very small scale.
Uh-huh.
But back then, it's like South Colton closed down.
Did it?
For these events.
Okay.
And then
Did they close down the 8th Street La Cadena?
Oh yeah, they had to. And like I said, at least one year we had, because they had a truck, to deal with the grocery delivery and whatever. So they made it a float, and so we were the float along with some of my cousins.
And then the float paraded down 8th La Cadena?
Yeah.
And where did the parade start? Do you remember?
Yeah, there's I don't know where it started, but it ended where I think there's a 7-Eleven right there.
Yes, on
Yeah.
N and La Cadena?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was right there as you're going south. It's on the right hand side.
Right.
It's
And-
the site of the original Garfield School, and then later it was a Circle K market.
Yeah.
But in between the Garfield and the Circle K, it was